Centre for about 3 years before COVID. We did it a little bit online during the pandemic. But in actual fact, I've been doing it before that as well. Death Cafe is something that was initiated by a psychotherapist called John Underwood, who lived just around the corner from here, actually. It's now like an international social franchise, that's what they call it. Now, what is it? If you're thinking, what on earth's a Death Cafe? Well, very simply, it's people get together and talk about death. That's it. Well, it's not quite it, obviously. There's tea and cakes, that's the cafe bit. We just generally find that some sugar helps with the conversations about mortality. And why would you come, is the thing. And I'm going to give you 4 reasons why you might want to come to Death Cafe, either today, but if you can't make today because it's short notice, hopefully, as Rutland Brother said, maybe in a month's time. Right, we'd love to do that again. First reason number 1, fear. We all fear death in different ways. I do. I'm mortal, sadly. I haven't quite accepted that fact yet on one level, but we know underneath that actually our time is limited, and there is some fear on that. Or if we don't fear it for ourselves, if we don't fear that kind of corporeal loss, we maybe fear the loss of our identity. Maybe we fear the loss of other people, our parents, our kids, friends, partners, pets. Pets is a big thing. I mean, certainly for kids, it's often their first experience of death. So we've got a lot of fear on that. And the thing about Death Cafes is that it's somehow talking about the fears. Somehow they start to loosen up. Some people might even say that they start to reduce. That's certainly my experience. That's number 1. The second reason why you might come to Death Cafe is that it's fascinating. This subject, which has been a big taboo in our culture, actually, when we start to talk about it, it's extraordinarily creative and interesting. And at Death Cafe, everything is on the menu. You can talk about the afterlife, if there is one. You could talk about what kind of coffin you might like, what music you might play at your funeral. You can talk about grief. It isn't a grief counselling workshop, but we talk about grief. You can talk about anything to do with mortality, and it's hearing other people's stories, other people's experiences, thoughts, is inspiring, I think. Third reason is there is always a sense of connection. Because I'm going to die alone. It's going to be an experience which I'm going to be on my own in some ways, but so are you. And there is something about sharing that experience that connects us together. And again, I think it sort of expands our sense of, if we have got fears about it, it actually helps with that. And the 4th reason I would say is that why would you come to Death Cafe? Because it makes you feel more alive. When I leave, every single time I've been there, it's different every time. I've always left with a slight skip in my step, a sense of actually that life has been expanded in some way. And also in my case, because I've got a tendency to drift towards the superficial, it's a sort of reminder to be a bit more meaningful, a bit more creative, and a bit more aware about the choices that I make on a daily basis. Convinced? I'm going to finish there. So it's 1 o'clock today. I'm going to finish with a couple of my favourite quotes about death. These are all Woody Allen, by the way. I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. There are worse things in life than death. Have you ever spent an evening with an insurance salesman? Not an insurance salesman. People here. I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve it through not dying. And this is good for Buddhists. Life's full of misery, loneliness, and suffering, and it's all over much too soon. Hope to see you later. If not later, maybe next month. And thanks for you guys for inviting me to join you, okay?
So this is going to be like on the last Saturday of each month?
I hope so, yeah.
I hope so. Okay, yeah.
Cool. Good.
Great.
That's
I'm going to go, even just for, I don't know, I don't know, an hour, I think I'm going to go give it a go, because I've got to clear out some stuff from a flat that has been left. It's another story. And if you come to the cafe, you can hear the rest of it if you want to. Great. So, so Kashanti is the third of one of the six perfections. So, what are perfections are more kind of processes that you can start to cultivate in our lives. You know, like we can get better at singing or dancing or writing or our job or whatever it is that we do. Maybe it's all three of those anyway. And it just takes practice. So what we practice and put our mind to and go over and over, it's a process of refining. And initially, the first stage, so I work as an educational psychologist, is one of the many things that I kind of do. I just say, so one of the things is in education, we talk about sort of 4 stages. The first stage of learning is you don't know what you don't know. And so you're blissfully, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I could do that, couldn't do that. So, and then the second stage is when learning happens, you start to become aware of what you're struggling with. And that's when sometimes we stop practicing something we're doing because it starts to seem quite difficult. We become aware of where the difficulty bit is. And then the next stage is we start to become aware of, these are the bits that are getting easier. And then the fourth stage is we become we become fluent in what we're doing, and we kind of forget how much we've developed. And maybe that's a good time to start mentoring someone else or sharing what you've learnt. So the same with Kashanti. We had this great chap, Shanti Deva. He wrote a book on the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life that got translated into various languages, including English, and there's many different translations on it. And a bodhisattva is a being, or any being, us become bodhisattvas, anyone who in their heart is sort of, maybe you have too, I think we all have that potential of just sort of wanting well for other people, wanting well, wishing well, and that seed of intention grows to a point where, it's sort of like really, really wanting well for all beings, and then to dedicating one's life for the benefit of all beings. And but fortunately, also in Buddhism and in many cultures, there's a sense of re-becoming, reincarnation. So we don't want to have to get it done in one lifetime, or feel we have to absolutely perfect everything just in one lifetime, but there'll be some accumulated impetus based on our circumstances and past whatever comes through that we can explore in this life. And so these 6 perfections are sort of 6 areas in which we might develop things. And one of the things that we do struggle with, I'll just say we do generally, just because we're alive and life has ups and downs. It's just part of how it is. There's going to be moments when, because it's change, it's impermanent, it's transient, which gives it its magic and its beauty, but also its kind of pain as well. Things that we like change and disappear, and things that we don't like, fortunately, also change and disappear. But for that moment, we kind of have to kind of live with them. And in that process of living them, there's this way of perfecting how we meet things that are challenging. So, so right now, I'm hoping that maybe this talk isn't one of the things that you're sort of patiently forbearing with. But if it is, great. Thank you. It might be your seat, or so there's always that sense, and they say this is an aspect of conditioned existence, that it has something called dukkha, and dukkha is more. I always imagine it is one of those onomatopoeic words, like duk 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 duk. It's close to an ill-fitting wheel of a cart. So I don't know if you've ever had a bike with a flat tire, for example, might be more the modern version, and you're going, maybe not even the modern version, because now we have like those Shimano tires with that gorilla kind of covering over. They don't get punctures, but back in the old day, bikes got punctures, and not that infrequently either. And one moment you'd be cycling, and the next thing it'd be like boom, 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 good, 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 good. So that's dukkha. It just doesn't, nothing feels like it quite ever perfect for long enough. And then you get that moment of, oh, that was amazing, yay. And then things shift and back to, so in that time, so when things aren't feeling like they are fitting, there's a sense of patience that is a quality that can be cultivated and perfected. And the kind of antithesis of that quality we notice is anger. We might notice when things are struggling with them, we might feel annoyed, irritated, and so on. But Shantideva explained that anger is the most destructive of emotions. Like a hurricane, it can sweep away in moments what has taken years of patient effort to build. Hatred is a form of anger. It comes when a person becomes angry with someone or something they used to hold in love or high regard. So it's a really quality that if that's left to just go run riot, can be quite really difficult consequences. It even says, a person with hatred in their heart can never find peace, no matter how hard they look for it. I mean, it's just a hard state to be in. Life holds no pleasure for them. Even a good night's sleep for them is a rarity. And so on. And even the friends come to fear a person who's irritable and angry. And I remember times when I was really struggling with, I did have a bad temper. And it was really hard. And I know that I could look at all the trauma factors that made me go into a fight-flight reaction whenever I felt threatened. But, and it took a long, long time to just build up my window of tolerance, I think, for things that were frightening to me. Yeah. And some of the things were just like filling in a form because I'd had bad experiences with people in authority. So when I filled in a form, it just filled me with dread and fear and sweat, and I couldn't think straight even to remember my address. It was really hard. Fortunately, I don't have that problem anymore, just like fill them in now. So it's fine. And so that's a practice, growing our window of tolerance so that, and this is the beautiful thing about Kashanti. It's not asking us to force ourselves into being patient against our will. It's encouraging all of ourselves to stay where we feel okay. And it's not like somebody imposing, be patient while I'm horrible to you. It's not a sense of imposed, forcible anything. It's more noticing when we have choice. And I remember when I was about 17 or 18, I was at the university library doing my physics degree as it was, but I really loved psychology. So I noticed Viktor Frankl's book on man's search for meaning. And what was really struck me, I don't know if I got to the end of the book, but what really struck me was even in the most dire situation of the concentration camp, he always felt he had some free will on what to do. And he showed this photo of all these emaciated people. Apparently he was one of them. And he said, actually, at that moment, they were lying in these beds, they were in sick bay, but at least they were out of the wind and they could huddle together. And so for them, it was like a moment respite from the hard, grueling work that was likely to kill them anyway. So although the photo is like a shock, so one thing about this practice, it's staying. So I'll just say, so one thing I'd like us to go when we go into groups to discuss, I'm just thinking, you might notice, when I spoke about anger and annoyance, my awful temper, that was really a struggle for me. But it's like how so maybe that might be like at a 1, and then on the other hand, you've got this beautiful Kashanti, patience, those moments when you've just been there for someone, or the car's broken down, but you've just sat there and taken a deep breath and taken it in your stride, and and you've kind of reflected that some things are just out of your control. That kind of patience, in that moment, you were growing those neural pathways that were, that could support you in other areas of difficulty. So if just in your minds, in your imaginations, if you could think, well, what might be your one? What's the worst? I mean, maybe that's can be, for me, it brings up quite a lot of shame actually, but I mean, I can remember. And then, 10. And this is why I really, really don't feel I have a fixed sense of self, because otherwise, just so much has changed. I certainly don't feel like I'm a fixed sense of self. It just seems incredible. So what's a 10? But where might you be? You don't have to have a number, but in your mind you might have a number. You don't have to share it, but just think, where are you now in the situation, and just give it a number. And then what I'd like you to do in your groups is just think, what helps your patients just be? Even if it was a 2, what stops it being a 1? Even if it's a 1, what stops it being a half? What is it that helps you sustain some Kashanti? And if you're on a 9, what helps it be a 9? What's been your journey? And then maybe we can just share with each other what's the things that help our Kashanti. And Kashanti is essentially staying in a good mental state in the face of trials and tribulations in our life. So it's forbearance with our body. So you might have an illness or something, or aches and pains. I think we've all got ones that we work with. I mean, I had a knocked off my bike, injured my hip, and now I think I've just got this constant kind of niggle that always comes up. So how do we work with, maybe that's pretty minor, our own failings and mistakes? How can we, accept that we make mistakes and still hold those with some kindness? Because that compassion then can be there for other people as well as times when those mistakes might resurface. What about the weather? I never understood why people talked about the weather until I came and lived in England. I thought it was because I lived in part of Zimbabwe at one point, and it's much more, that's pretty similar day to day, and they gradually shift. And if it's going to rain, you'll see one day there'll be clouds, the next day there'll be a few more clouds, and the skies were quite open, so you could sense almost in the air when the rain was arriving. You had a much more sense of it coming. It wasn't so changeable. But how do we stay with the weather, things, other people, and so on? Right, are you all sort of okay with what you're going to talk about in some groups in a moment? Will be for 15 minutes. And what I'd like you to invite you to do, so just look at a sense, you're going to be in threes. Threes is a good, maybe a 4, but not more than a 3 or a 4. And so just think about that in your mind now in preparation for your group. Okay, when I'm at my worst and everything's bugging me and I'm just grumpy and complaining and just life is really just like hard and I'm drowning in it. It's when's that like, for whatever it is. Okay, and just think, okay, when are there moments when there's ease in that, and I can, even though I'm struggling, I've got some resource. How do I get those resources? How do I manage, like, maybe take some moment to take a breath or look after myself? What helps me remember to look after myself when my body's aching, or, tolerate when things are difficult, or recognize that other people may be doing the best that they can. And they're not out to get you and annoy you and frustrate you. They're just doing their thing. They're just trying to get on with their lives. And, how do we remember that? What helps us to remember that other people are just like us, maybe? So and then if you think, okay, when I'm feeling resourced, where am I at this moment in this possible practice? Where might you be? And what might you do or are doing that's helping you with your growth of Kashanti and your journey towards becoming bodhisattvas, possibly in this life, and if not, in some future life. There you go. Okay, so groups for 15 minutes, maybe a 3 there, there's a 3 there, a 3, 3, 3, 3, something like that. before, I've lost. So just find someone. And if you find you're on your own, you can join me. Last resort.
Ideally, as much as I'm sitting like this, I can't do that. I've got what I need. So I know that it's in school when I was in school. If I sit like this, I can Something like this.
It's not very loud, but thank you. Yeah, so just say thank you to your group, your attention, and just spend a few moments just maybe reflecting on some of the things that you've heard in your groups, and preparing if you wish to share. I guess, what are your top tips for Kashanti? Yeah, for you maybe different to other people. Yeah, are we all back? Great, good. Yeah, top tips for Kashanti. And also when you feedback, maybe feeding back from your own experience, or you can just say, if someone in my group mentioned, you don't mention their name, because they, if they want to share, they can share themselves. So yeah, so what are your top tips for Kashanti? It might have come from you, or something you feel inspired hearing from someone else. Yeah.
I think for me it's just about noticing what's going on. Having that awareness.
Noticing what's going on and having that awareness.
Yeah. For me, definitely. But I think it's acknowledging that and then not taking away what's going on.
Not taking away what's going on.
That works for me, because as soon as I've acknowledged it.
Yes.
I then notice I'm feeling this way.
Right.
And in a way, that is a release, because if I shut it down, it's going to come out in different ways.
Oh, yeah. So is it, and I see you touching your, so is it maybe some sort of noticing in your body what's going on, as well as what's going on around?
I give myself permission to feel.
Yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to feel.
And then
what's going on.
That I manage it is that, okay, one, talking about it.
Yeah.
Not to everybody, but I walk. And I meditate.
Feel what's going on, walk and meditate, and find someone you trust to talk to.
I find it a release when I feel angry. We used to, because in my family that's something that we never talked about, or we just pushed it under the carpet. So
now feeling when it comes up.
It's a release.
It's a release to notice it. Great, thank you. Great. Yeah. So cultivating that patience and Kashanti, noticing when you are starting to get and it's rising up. Does that kind of feeling up, isn't it? Like your hackles start rising. Yes, that sort of feeling. And then noticing that, and then finding some creative ways to work with that. And also what you've reminded me is that some people say that, that sense of anger is a sense of your boundaries being, or just sort of something being crossed a bit. So it doesn't mean you've got to, go out all guns blazing. Fortunately, we don't have a gun culture so much in the UK. Yes. But we can find maybe some ways to, like, whoa, hang on a minute, what happened there? Yeah, and then take some time to reconnect with that part of you that maybe didn't feel safe or loved, and go down to the need underneath. Thank you. I'm just sort of paraphrasing and adding on to yours, but you did. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. And so, anyone? Hands went shooting up there.
We were talking about trying to, when other people are annoying. I'm never annoying, so
You're safe.
No, that's good. We have that in common. And so just to understand it's not personal.
It's not personal when other people are annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not personal. You represent something for them. You some kind of you project something for them.
You represent or project. So you represent or project something for them, and it's not personal. They're not seeing you as you. It's something else, and that's triggering something in them. So it's not personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it is me, so maybe we shouldn't be in some kind of relationship or connection, but I don't know, I think it's always some kind of projection, or it's not personal.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. So what's helping is noticing that though of course if it is something that you are doing, that's hopefully one can sort of somehow, I think that's why friends are so helpful. They can sort of help feedback on which bits I might by blind spots, and maybe I'm doing stuff, but sometimes it is that the other person's kind of working through their thing, and then it just kind of, it's like, what is going on? I don't know, and it starts to become this mutual kind of discontent and confusion, and it can kind of fuel itself. So then it's also sort of thinking, hang on a minute, what if this isn't, it's not me, there isn't really, and sort of in Buddhism they also talk about there isn't really a fixed sense of what's the me, what's the part of me that's being, and maybe you were really attached to being seen in a particular way, and then what if we don't have to be attached to that way of being, and then it doesn't really matter in some ways. But yeah, gosh, there's something about relationships, we could talk about it for a long time, but I did see your hand up, and there was a hand here somewhere. Went at your hand. Either of you want to go? Maybe you, then you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of get a sense in the room that many of us, when we were growing up, were not allowed to be our authentic self, that we weren't allowed to be sad, that we weren't allowed to be angry as children. I think that comes from generational trauma. My mum used to come out with some brilliant sayings like, it's better than a kick in the teeth. If I was it's better than a kick than a kick in the teeth. If I was upset about something, it was dismissed. I was not allowed to be upset.
Unless you'd actually been kicked in the teeth, it wasn't at a level of...
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's kind of just very serious things with my parents' divorce or things that happened.
Wow.
I wasn't allowed to be sad. Smile.
Yeah, smile.
Smile. Stop being sad. In not being able to express sadness, that then grows into anger and not being heard. And it's that sense of never being heard as a young person.
Never being heard as a young
child,
person.
And that sense of injustice. And my mother, we've grown together through our spirituality and our journey. And it's now recognition that my anger or anger itself is the equivalent to the amount of pain that you
So underneath the anger is pain.
Yeah.
And anger, this is interesting as well. Sorry, I don't go back around sort of shiatsu in the traditional Chinese medicine. And anger is seen as when, you have this sense of yourself or your creative energy is frustrated and blocked. And then it kind of pushes out. So anger is seen as, there's almost like a plant underneath a bit of concrete, and that energy to get out. And that's what that rush of anger, frustrated creativity, they would say, was anger. But you also talked about grief being underneath that as well. And I think that's so useful to know that sometimes, and that's maybe the Kashanti bit, is...
And that's having the compassion then for the other person.
compassion for the other person.
And compassion for oneself.
Compassion for oneself.
That their anger is because they are in such deep pain that it's
anger,
not personal. Their anger towards me is not personal. It's about their pain.
So anger is not personal. It's an indication that there's pain underneath. And that they're not being heard, and there's that frustration of them, and it comes back to that sense of that child wanting to come through and be heard,
be acknowledged, be honoured.
And there's some things in life that are painful that happen, and
when that's so large, then little things that are just irritants that normally wouldn't bother you become
Right.
really big, and actually
So you're full up. You're
literally
you're
to
full
capacity
up.
yourself.
And then the things that maybe wouldn't have bothered you
Yeah,
just
do.
become overwhelming.
Yeah, and the way
Right.
for me, the way through that,
Yes.
meditation, and recognizing the peace within that meditation, and then extending
recognizing
that
the
peace out
peace.
throughout my day.
Right.
So rather than reacting to something
Right.
immediately, is to sit and observe as I would do
Observe.
meditation.
So using some of the qualities you're building up in meditation to kind of not just, and that's quite beautiful really. So we practice meditation, we say on the cushion, take your meditation off the cushion and into the world as well. So there's something like how that you're noticing what you've kind of galvanized and cultivated through your meditation, and bringing that maybe into the rest of your, so it can be a resource when things are a bit more challenging, or a lot more challenging.
And the last part
Thank you.
of that is Leela, is
yeah.
that this is the divine song, this is the divine game. Not to take any of it too seriously, because once you take it too seriously, you start to engage in the anger and the rage and the pain. Yeah, that's my final bit, is that this is Leela, this is Maya.
Sometimes like you say, there's a bigger picture, stepping back in the bigger picture, and holding some of these things more lightly. Thank you. Wow, that was loads. Could do a workshop on that. Great, thank you. Wow. And last but not least, sorry.
That was really interesting. It really struck me when you said about anger being a release for you, because personally, I've and what you said as well about not being allowed to be anger seen as a real negative trait when you're little. Like, I was kind of labelled by my family as the drama queen growing up. So, and was the more kind of
sounds a bit
emotional like one, but was told to kind of quieten it down. And I think for me, like, I know that I can go from 0 to 10 and feel anger incredibly quickly and become very reactive. But I know underneath that anger is just pain and sadness and hurt. And I find it a really interesting concept that you can see your anger as a release, because I feel very much so that I'm very scared or ashamed of my anger.
Ashamed of your anger.
And I'm also aware that it can become a force that can then overwhelm and drown me and lead me into a darker place.
The strength of it.
Yeah.
And where it's going.
So I've come to really fear when I get that anger emotion coming, because it signals danger.
And maybe unacceptance as well. And
and I'm really...
So there's layers and layers and layers, I think.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And I think the more that I learn and try to learn how to kind of forgive myself, like, it makes those things easier, like more helpful to deal with. And for me right now, I'm in a very stressful work situation, which right now is at the top of my mind, and I am having to be in fight mode a lot of the time.
Wow.
So I'm finding, and this has been over the past few weeks, and it kind of ebbs and flows of the pain of it. And I am just having to face it.
I can feel that.
Like, head on. But I am finding that I'm so aware that this is a difficult time for me right now in my life, and that I can't hide from it. I need to kind of deal with it, but that I need to kind of be as gentle and kind to myself as I can be.
So some of the things you said, I'm thinking are really, really key, that, you know, they could be sort of like things that have happened in the past that mean that your anger feels, you maybe haven't had an opportunity to build your skills around your anger, and it can feel quite overwhelming. It's a strong emotion, but also we have some choices around it, and also recognizing which bits are out of our control. Like, it could be things that exacerbate our anger, like it could be our work, you were saying, your work, or, you know, history and things like that. But then we can have some choices about, and one of the things that you were saying that does help is just noticing, and you mentioned that as well, just noticing that it can be difficult.
I think as well.
And so I'm just going to have to tie up a little bit so we can chat a little bit afterwards, because I'm aware of the time. Great. Sorry about that. Okay.
Is there time for one more point?
Oh, I don't know. Let Ratnaprabha decide.
Well, we're a bit late.
We are running a bit over. But if you like,
we're on the same topic next week, though. So
oh, we are. Right. Okay.
One
Good.
more week on Kashanti.
Great. One more week on Kashanti. And can you say it in 30 seconds?
I have different patients with different people.
Ah.
So if we go from 1
yes.
to 10,
yes.
I find that with some people I'm an 8 or a 9, or with other people I'm a 1 or a 2.
Good noticing. Yeah, that's a good to notice.
My way of coping with it is just to shut up.
Oh, yeah. So it could be, yeah. So
with
so noticing.
1s or 2s, I don't say anything.
Right. So notice, yeah.
Patient persistence and just let it.
Yes. So sometimes you can choose. So you can sometimes feel, at this moment, I think the best thing is just for, let me just be with myself and so timing. There's something about when we talk also, the timing of it can inflame a situation, or it can soothe a situation. And maybe thinking about our speech as well, and silence can also be healing and helpful. So there we go. Gosh, I hope you got lots from the session and stuff to reflect on. And thank you for all your contributions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to say, we do look at some of these things in the mindfulness course if you're interested, choices and how we respond to difficult emotions. So, and I've been drawing on some of that when I'm listening to you as well. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Have a great week.
Have a great week. Yeah, see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a good week. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, Nez.